Well, if any of you read the New Testament or the Old Testament of the Bible, you would know that one of the great friendships in the Bible was between David and Jonathan. Do any of you know who David or Jonathan was? Anybody? There's one hand, there's two hands. No other hands? Well, I'll tell you a little bit about it. Jonathan was the son of King Saul, who happened to be one of those really bummer kings of old-time Jerusalem. And he was doing such a lousy job that the Lord decided to get rid of him, and he was going to replace him with David, who became the great King David, who Jesus descended from. Well, it just so happened that at that time, David and Saul's son Jonathan were great friends. They were buddies. And the friendship was even more remarkable because King Saul, who, as I said, was Jonathan's father, hated David. So at one point, Saul even ordered Jonathan to betray David. And of course, Jonathan refused. Perfect example of what Jesus is talking about in our gospel. When it comes to doing what is right or wrong, neither a parent nor our closest friend should be able to force us to violate our conscience. And this is Jesus' point in today's gospel reading. And of course, because of his claim to be the Son of God, Jesus divided people naturally, even father from son and mother from daughter. Those who were willing to follow the teachings of Jesus, obviously, and those who rejected Jesus. So the decision to follow Jesus touches the deepest parts of our being. And no one should be able to interfere with it, not even our parents or our closest friends. And Jesus was, in fact, as we know so well, able to divide people because people are divisible. From the very day that Cain killed Abel, to the day when Judas sold Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, and every single day afterwards, two people in the same situation have made different decisions about whether or not to follow or not to follow the teachings of Jesus. And of course, even after hereditary and environment have been allowed for, because a lot of people will say, oh, well, she couldn't help herself. You know, it was in her genes, or, you know, it was the awful environment that he was raised in that caused him to do all these terrible things. But even after these kinds of things have been allowed for, the awesome fact of human freedom remains. God gave us our intellects, and he gave us our freedom, and he won't take it away from us. And it can be a great, tremendous burden to realize that our everyday choices can indeed have eternal consequences, that our petty words and deeds can echo through the vaults of the universe, if you will, that we finite creatures have infinite, never-ending futures, and it is up to us to choose where we want to go with that future. And Jesus, of course, knew so well that his message was like fire. And as we know so well, fire has great power. Fire can destroy, and fire can create. Wheat and water, when exposed to fire, becomes bread. Clay, when fire, becomes pottery. Wood, when burned, gives warmth on a cold night. But we know also that fire can kill. We can see the damage that is done by these tremendous forest fires out west. And Jesus' message can do the same. It can warm us, it can nourish us, but it can also lead us into conflict and into dissolution of relationships. And it must never be taken for granted. It must never be left unattended in our hearts, if you will. And so, as we have seen, Jesus speaks about how the fire he is casting on the earth will indeed have various effects. And Jesus teaches us that not everyone will, in fact, accept the fire of his message and his call. Each and every single one of us must look through the lens, if you will, of Jesus before we can approach the searing sun of gospel grace. Some will choose, unfortunately, not to follow Jesus. And they will go their own way. There will be division. Members of households will even be divided over the fire of the gospel. And all you have to do is watch the news. And you know so well that in our world today, relationships between individuals and groups and nations are at a crucial point. The fire of Christ must burn brightly and intensely, and Christ's fire must blaze in each one of us. The great theologian, the Jesuit theologian Desjardins, once wrote, "Someday, after mastering the winds, the waves, the tides, and gravity, we shall harness for God the energies of love. And then, for the second time in the history of the world, man will have discovered fire." That's what Jesus is talking about. And that, my friends, is our ongoing challenge.